Okay, so now that I have finished gushing over each book individually, let's gush over all of them as a whole. And yes, we will get onto the stuff that I didn't like. Don't worry. Don't worry. But let's talk about the stuff that we liked first, because that's the order I wrote them down in my notebook. These books, and everything that Tamara Pierce writes apparently, have astounding female characters. Everyone should read these women. Like, they are not cliches, they are whole, real people who happen to be female, and it is the most refreshing thing in the world to read a character like that. Even Katniss, who manages to be a badass without being too much of a cliche, looks like a cliche compared to these characters, these female characters. Just when you think that you've caught Tamara Pierce in a cliche, she pulls the rug right out from under you and you were wrong. Girls, I really cannot stress this enough. If you are a teenage woman or if you have daughters, please, I'm begging you, read these books to them or read these books yourself. Do yourself the favor and the pleasure of reading about such amazing female characters. You will not regret it, I promise you. And you will never want to go back to Bella Swan ever again. Oh no. But it's not just the female characters, all of the characters feel so complete and real. They feel like real people that you could meet. Remember how I have this criteria that I can tell if it's a good character if I can put them in a situation and know what they would do? I can do that with pretty much every character in these books. That is how well written they are. The world also feels extremely real, and it's never over-explained. Tamara Pierce really is great at the showing instead of telling. You get a great feel for the world and how things like the magic system and stuff work just from Beka's interactions with her world. There's a lot of great slang, which I have started using, much to the confusion of everyone around me. And everything feels very real and whole and complete without having a lot of description. One thing, I love fantasy stories, but I hate sort of those high fantasy stories that spend pages and pages just explaining how their magic system works, or pages and pages explaining how their politics work. And these books blend all of that in together so you find out just the right amount of information that you need, not more, not less. There's also a lot of action in these stories because obviously she's a cop and she gets into a lot of fights. And the action is written excellently. You never go, oh, she's a tiny girl, she can never win this, because she's been trained to fight in a way that is applicable to her size and shape. And so, yeah, she wins fights, she loses fights. It's really amazing to read all of it, and the action scenes are well written and entertaining as hell. Okay, so let's talk just a little bit about the stuff that I didn't like as much. These things definitely did not ruin the books for me, but they were things that I noticed. The first one being there's an odd framing device in the first book. The first book doesn't start out right away with Beka. It starts out with a mother telling her naughty son about their famous ancestress, Beka Cooper, and how the son should try to honor his ancestor and not be so naughty and stop stealing and things like that. And then that really doesn't come up again. It doesn't return to that at the end of the book, and it doesn't really return to that at the end of all three books. It might kind of, but even then you don't feel the connection between that way over there at the beginning of book 1 and the end of book 3. So I think we could have just done without that completely, and I'm not sure why that's there. One thing I did notice in books 1 and 2 is there is some filler. Book 3 is extremely tight, and I didn't ever feel like there was filler. Books 1 and 2 had what I might classify as filler, and we all know how I feel about filler. However, it was very interesting filler, and there was stuff happening within it that did pertain to the story later on. It just could have maybe been a little bit more streamlined, but honestly I didn't mind because it meant I got to read more about these glorious characters. The other thing that was maybe a little bit odd was that the stories were written in the style of a journal, as though Beka was keeping a journal and writing all this stuff down. Which is fine, but I've always been bothered by the journal as a device, as a storytelling device, because if it's going to be a believable journal, you can't be as accurate about what people said, what they did, how they moved. And in this story, Beka tells us everything that everyone said, facial expressions that they had, little things that they did. And she would not have been able to remember to write that all down in such detail in her journal, unless she's, being a little bit creative with it. She does, in the third book, we discover that she has a mind palace, which is not the best explained if you don't know what a mind palace is. So that might explain a little bit of how she so accurately relays all of the experiences that she's had. But I almost wish that they had done away with the journal thing altogether and just had her been telling the story. And finally, the biggest problem I have with these 3 books is that there are only 3 of them. I want entire series about Beka's life, and I want it to continue, and there's only 3. That makes me so sad, but I do want to go reread The Song of the Lioness, because I feel now, I've always been worried to reread it because I was worried that I liked it so much because I was so young and didn't know better. But now I'm pretty sure that I'm still gonna like it, and it's still gonna be glorious. And you all really, I cannot recommend the Beka Cooper series by Tamara Pierce strongly enough. If you are a woman or a girl, you should read it. If you are a man, you should read it. My husband read it with me, and he loved them too, just as much as I did. We would have long discussions about this greatness. So everyone should read it, because Tamara Pierce is a very, very, very skilled writer who deserves even more credit than she gets. So seriously, go read it. What are you doing? What are you even still doing here? Why are you not? You just turn right around and you walk out that door and you go to your library and pick up that first book. Terrier. It's called Terrier. Go do. Now. Turn. Go. Still in front of your computer. Dang it. Okay, I'll go get it for you. I will go get it for you. Crying out loud, I have to do everything.